My child, stay with me for a moment before you close this and move on to whatever else is waiting for your attention today. Something in your life has been quietly asking for attention, and I do not want you to keep moving past it the way you may have moved past it on so many other days already. You did not arrive at this message by pure accident. Something quieter than chance drew your attention here, at this exact point in your life. And I want you to trust that pull rather than dismiss it as nothing. It is not nothing. It is the beginning of something you have needed to hear for longer than you have admitted, even to yourself. I want to speak honestly about what you have been carrying, because I do not think you have let many people see the full size of it. You have smiled through days when something heavier sat underneath. You have shown up for responsibilities while feeling genuinely depleted. You have carried concerns too complicated to explain in a single sentence, and you have done most of it quietly without complaint, because you did not want to become a burden to the people around you. I want you to know that none of that has gone unnoticed. You have not been distant from the eyes that matter, even in your hardest, most tired moments. Difficulty has a way of stripping away everything except the most honest parts of a person. And honesty, even when unpolished and full of doubt, is worth paying attention to. I want to talk about the specific exhaustion of holding everything together without much acknowledgement from anyone around you. Maintaining a composed exterior while genuinely struggling underneath it is one of the more quietly draining things a person can do, and it rarely gets recognized, because by definition, it is designed not to be visible. Being tired of that performance does not mean you are failing at anything. It means you are human, carrying an ordinary kind of weight that almost everyone carries at some point, even if they rarely say so. I want to speak now about why this particular moment matters. Not because every message deserves this level of attention, but because something in your life is standing at a genuine point of decision, even if it does not feel dramatic from where you are currently standing. Some of the most significant turning points in a life do not arrive as emergencies. They arrive as ordinary moments, very much like this one, when a person simply decides, quietly, to finally pay attention to something they have been avoiding. I want you to consider that this might be exactly that kind of quiet, important moment for you. Not because anything dramatic is required, but because you are here, still reading, still willing to consider that something in your life deserves closer attention than you have been giving it lately. I want to talk honestly about the specific thing many people carry without ever naming it clearly. The sense that they are handling life reasonably well on the surface, while quietly aware that something underneath needs real attention. Maybe it is a conversation you have been avoiding because you already suspect how it will go. Maybe it is a habit you keep returning to that you already know does not actually help. Maybe it is simply a persistent sense that you have drifted slightly from the person you actually want to be, without any single dramatic moment marking when that drift began. Whatever it specifically is for you, noticing it honestly right now, even briefly, matters more than you might currently realize. Not because ignoring it one more day would be catastrophic, but because these things tend to compound quietly. A small drift left unaddressed becomes a slightly larger drift the next day, and eventually enough of those unaddressed days accumulate into a distance that feels much harder to close than it would have been to address honestly at the beginning. I want to speak plainly about doubt, because I suspect there have been moments when you privately wondered whether anyone actually sees you clearly, whether your quiet efforts actually matter, whether your life carries any real significance beyond the daily tasks that fill it. I want to address that doubt directly, rather than let it sit unspoken. Every quiet moment you thought, no one witnessed, every tear you let fall, only when you were certain no one would see it. Every whispered thought too fragile to say out loud, none of it has gone completely unnoticed. I want to talk honestly about the specific fear that you have somehow used up all your chances. That whatever you have been hoping for has already passed you by because too much time has gone by or too many things have gone wrong. That fear, understandable as it is, tends to exaggerate the finality of things that are not actually finished. A delayed hope is not automatically a dead one. A door that has stayed closed for a long time is not automatically a door that will remain closed forever. I want to speak now about what has actually been happening beneath the surface of your life during this long, difficult stretch, because I think you deserve to understand it more clearly rather than simply being told to keep waiting without explanation. You have developed a deeper capacity for patience than you likely had before this season began. You have developed a clearer sense of what actually matters to you, refined through wanting something and not receiving it immediately. You have developed resilience specifically through continuing to function even when circumstances offered very little visible encouragement to do so. I want you to understand that these developments are not separate from whatever comes next in your life. They are the actual foundation that makes receiving and sustaining something genuinely good possible. The version of you standing here right now, shaped by genuine difficulty, is considerably more prepared to receive something significant than you may currently give yourself credit for. I want to talk about the specific opposition that tends to increase right before something meaningful shifts, because I do not want you to mistake resistance for proof that nothing good is coming. Sometimes discouragement grows louder specifically because you are closer to a breakthrough than you realize. And whatever has been working against your progress is making one final push before losing its grip entirely. I am not telling you this so you treat every hard day as evidence of some grand spiritual battle. Ordinary life is genuinely difficult sometimes, in simple human ways that do not require a dramatic explanation. But I want you to hold this possibility gently, so that if resistance does show up during a season of real change, you do not automatically assume it proves nothing is happening. I want to speak now about what it actually means for something significant to be approaching in your life, in a way that goes beyond simply comforting language. There is a real connection between sustained faith combined with sustained effort and the eventual arrival of genuine opportunity, though that connection rarely operates in the immediate, transactional way people sometimes expect. It functions more like patient cultivation, where consistent effort over time creates conditions that eventually allow genuinely significant opportunities to become both visible and accessible to you. I want you to consider that everything you have built through this difficult season was not simply preparing you to endure more difficulty indefinitely. It was preparing you to actually recognize and receive genuine opportunity when it finally arrives, with real capacity rather than exhausted disbelief. A person who has given up entirely on hope often struggles to fully receive good things even when they finally arrive, because they have trained themselves so thoroughly to expect disappointment that genuine opportunity feels unfamiliar, even slightly unbelievable. I want to talk now about what specifically might begin shifting in the days ahead, because I do not want this message to remain entirely abstract. You may notice gradually a growing sense of clarity about decisions that previously felt confusing or overwhelming. You may notice conversations landing differently than similar conversations have landed before. You may notice opportunities appearing that specifically require the kind of resilience and patience you have already developed through this difficult season. I want you to pay attention to these shifts as they begin appearing, not with anxious scrutiny that examines every small development for proof that everything has changed, but with a kind of quiet readiness that simply notices and receives what arrives without demanding it conform to a specific dramatic shape. I want to speak about comparison for a moment, because I suspect you have occasionally wondered why other people's circumstances seem to resolve more quickly or more visibly than your own. despite your consistent effort to maintain hope through genuine difficulty. Other people's timelines are not a measure of the value or the eventual outcome of your own sustained hope. What has been quietly building in you does not need to match anyone else's visible progress in order to eventually matter in your own life, in your own time, in a way specifically suited to what you have actually developed through this particular stretch of waiting. I want to speak honestly about the specific loneliness that can accompany maintaining hope when the people around you do not fully understand or share that same commitment to trust through difficulty. There is a particular kind of isolation in continuing to believe when others around you have already moved on to resignation or cynicism about similar circumstances in their own lives. That loneliness is real, and it does not need to be minimized. But this particular season of sustained, sometimes solitary hope is building something in you that will eventually connect you with other people who share that same capacity. I want to talk now about forgiveness, because I suspect it connects to at least part of what has been unsettled in you lately. Forgiveness does not mean pretending something did not hurt you, and it does not mean allowing someone back into your life who has shown no real change or accountability. It simply means loosening the grip that a past wound has over your present peace. You are able to release someone from your resentment without necessarily releasing them back into your daily life. Those are genuinely two separate decisions, and you are allowed to make one without automatically making the other. If there is a specific situation you have been quietly holding on to, even a low simmering resentment you rarely mention out loud, consider setting down a portion of that weight today. Not because the original situation was fair, but because that resentment has likely been costing you more over time than it has been costing anyone else. I want to speak about the version of yourself that existed before certain hard seasons changed you, because I suspect there are days you quietly miss that earlier version, the one who trusted more easily, who worried less about being hurt again, who had not yet learned to brace for disappointment before it even arrived. You are not required to return to exactly who you were before, as though everything you have lived through since then was simply damage that needs undoing. Some of what you have become through hardship is genuinely more solid than what existed before it, even if it does not always feel that way in quieter, more vulnerable moments. I want to address the fear of hoping again after being disappointed too many times, because that fear makes complete sense given everything you have walked through. Hope that has been crushed repeatedly starts to feel dangerous, almost reckless. But protecting yourself from hope entirely does not actually protect you from anything real. A life lived without any hope at all is not actually safer. It is simply smaller. I am not asking you to hope recklessly, ignoring genuine warning signs or real patterns from your past. I am asking you to leave a small amount of room for the possibility that not everything you hope for is destined to be disappointed the way some of your past hopes were. Some of what you are hoping for now is genuinely going to arrive. And I would rather you notice it clearly when it does than have trained yourself so thoroughly against hope that you cannot recognize a real answer, even standing directly in front of you. I want to speak now about what it means to actually trust a process you cannot fully see the end of yet. Trust like that is difficult, especially for someone who has learned through hard experience that things do not always work out the way they were hoped to. I am not asking for blind trust that ignores reality or refuses to acknowledge genuine difficulty. I am asking for a steadier kind of trust, one that can hold both truths at once, that things are genuinely hard right now, and that something meaningful is still unfolding underneath the difficulty, even before it becomes fully visible. I want to talk about patience for a moment, not as passive waiting, but as an active, ongoing choice to keep paying honest attention even when clarity is not immediately available. Real patience involves continued honest attention alongside continued waiting, and it deserves genuine respect rather than being dismissed as simply doing nothing while time passes. I want to speak about identity for a moment, because I think a great deal of what has weighed on you connects back to quiet uncertainty about who you actually are underneath your circumstances, your responsibilities, your daily routine. Circumstances shift constantly, but the core of who you actually are has remained steady beneath all of it, even during the seasons that felt most exhausting. I want to speak about community as well, because I think isolation has likely made this season feel heavier than it needed to feel. Even a small amount of genuine connection, a single honest conversation, can meaningfully lighten a burden that feels unbearable when carried entirely alone. If you have been isolating yourself, consider reaching toward at least one person you trust in the coming days. I want to talk now about gratitude, not as an obligation, but as something genuinely useful moving forward. Gratitude tends to widen a person's capacity to notice good things as they actually arrive, rather than remaining so fixated on what has not yet happened that the things which have already begun shifting go unnoticed. I want to invite you to notice, honestly, whatever small good things are actually present in your life right now, even amid everything that remains difficult. I want to speak plainly about self-compassion as well, because I suspect you have been considerably harder on yourself throughout this long season than you would ever be toward someone else, demonstrating the exact same sustained hope under the exact same pressure. If someone else had walked through everything you have walked through, you would likely admire them without hesitation. I want you to consider extending that same admiration toward yourself rather than continuing to minimize what your own sustained hope has actually required and accomplished. I want to talk about rest now, because I think you have likely postponed it more than you should have, believing that maintaining hope meant never fully acknowledging how tired the process of sustaining it has actually made you. Rest is not a betrayal of the hope you have built. It is what allows that hope to continue sustainably rather than eventually collapsing under its own accumulated weight. I want you to give yourself permission to actually rest, not as a reward you have to earn through more sustained belief, but simply as a necessary part of continuing to be who you have already shown yourself capable of being. I want to close this reflection by speaking directly to whatever specific doubt is loudest in you right now. In this exact moment, as you continue reading, whatever that particular doubt is, whether it concerns whether your sustained hope actually mattered, whether things will actually improve, or whether you have truly understood what this season required of you, that doubt does not have final authority over what is actually true about your life. Doubt is persistent, and it often feels convincing, but it is not always accurate, and it does not change what has genuinely been built in you across this long, difficult season of sustained hope. So take one more slow breath before you move forward into whatever comes next in your day. You have maintained something valuable for a long time, often without external confirmation, often at real internal cost. Something is genuinely allowed to shift now, even quietly, even gradually, even before you can fully see every piece of what has already begun changing around you. I want to talk more specifically now about what letting a genuine shift begin actually requires from you. It requires you to notice, honestly, whatever specific thing has been holding you back, whether that is unresolved anger, a decision you have been avoiding, or simply a habit of expecting disappointment before anything has even happened. It requires you to name that thing clearly, at least to yourself, rather than letting it continue operating quietly in the background of your thoughts. And it requires you to take one small, honest step in response to it, even if that step feels modest compared to the size of what you have been carrying. I want to speak about the specific relief that comes from finally being met by circumstances that reflect what your sustained hope has already been building toward. That relief tends to arrive gradually rather than all at once, through an accumulation of smaller confirmations rather than one single dramatic turning point. I want you to remain open to receiving that relief in whatever form it actually takes, rather than narrowing your expectation down to only one specific shape it must arrive in to count as genuine. I want to talk about the people who may not fully understand or acknowledge what your sustained hope has actually required. Some people, even now, may continue underestimating what maintaining belief through genuine difficulty has cost you internally. That does not diminish the reality of what you have built through this season. Recognition from every single person was never the actual measure of whether your hope mattered. I want to speak now about what practical steps might look like as you move forward from here. First, continue maintaining the same quiet trust that has carried you through the hardest stretch of this season, even as circumstances begin to shift more favorably. Second, allow yourself to actually receive good developments when they arrive, rather than immediately searching for reasons to doubt them. Third, continue extending grace to yourself during moments you inevitably still doubt or struggle, even as your circumstances improve. Fourth, remain patient with the pace at which the fuller resolution of this season actually unfolds. I want to speak now about the specific fear that even if something good happens, it might not last, that circumstances could shift back into difficulty, and everything you have quietly built through sustained hope might feel undone by a future hard stretch. Hope built through genuine, repeated testing over time is considerably more durable than hope that has never actually been challenged. What you have built through this difficult season tends to hold steady through future difficulty as well, precisely because it was forged through real uncertainty rather than simply assumed without ever being tested. I want to talk about humility for a moment, because it deserves careful attention as you move forward. Genuine humility is not the same as refusing to acknowledge that your sustained hope mattered. It is possible to recognize honestly that your continued trust has been significant, while still remaining grounded, still remaining grateful rather than entitled about whatever confirmation arrives. I want to close this reflection with one final, honest thought. Everything shared here rests on a truth that was true long before this message reached you, and will remain true long after you finish reading it. You are someone who has consistently chosen to hope when giving up would have been fully understandable. That choice, sustained across a genuinely difficult season, has built something real in you. Something that was never actually dependent on immediate confirmation in order to matter. Carry that truth gently into whatever comes next. You do not need to chase confirmation or force it to arrive faster than it naturally will. You simply need to continue being who you have already consistently, faithfully chosen to be, trusting that whatever is already beginning to unfold will continue to reveal itself clearly in its own time, exactly as it has already begun to do. Before you go, I want to leave you with a few simple, practical things worth holding on to. Notice the small signs of change rather than only watching for something dramatic and undeniable. A moment of unexpected clarity, a conversation that goes better than anticipated, a quiet sense of internal peace about a situation that once felt genuinely overwhelming. These are not insignificant. They are often the earliest signs of a season shifting toward greater resolution. Give yourself permission to rest without guilt, recognizing that maintaining hope through real uncertainty is genuinely demanding work deserving of real recovery. Be patient with how gradually resolution tends to unfold, understanding that lasting confirmation is rarely built or received all at once. Keep speaking honestly, both to yourself privately and, where it feels safe to do so, to people who genuinely understand and value the sustained trust you have maintained. And finally, keep returning to this quiet, steady truth for as long as you need it. What you have built through repeated moments of continued trust was never wasted. Even during the stretches it felt that way. It mattered then, and it continues to matter now. As this new chapter gently begins to unfold around what you have already quietly, consistently chosen to believe, take a breath. Let your shoulders drop just slightly from wherever they have been holding tension without you fully noticing it. You have already demonstrated repeatedly exactly the kind of sustained hope this new season now begins to honor. That track record means something real. Carry it with you gently into whatever comes next, trusting that the resolution you have quietly waited for is finally beginning to catch up to the hope you have already faithfully maintained. I want to speak a little more about what this quieter shift might actually feel like as it continues unfolding, because I think it is easy to imagine resolution as something loud and dramatic, when in reality it often arrives in far smaller, steadier forms. It might look like a decision that once felt impossible suddenly becoming clear. It might look like a relationship you had quietly worried about beginning to settle into something more stable. It might look like nothing more dramatic than a growing sense of internal steadiness. A quiet knowing that whatever comes next, you have already proven capable of facing it with genuine trust rather than complete despair. I want you to hold space for all of these possibilities rather than narrowing your expectation down to only one specific form the blessing must take in order to count. Sometimes the most meaningful confirmation is the quiet kind, the kind that settles into your own sense of security rather than arriving as a dramatic external event. I want to talk now about what it means to keep trusting even after this season begins to unfold favorably, because this moment is not a finish line but a continuing process. Hope is not something secured once and then permanently guaranteed. It continues to require the same quiet, consistent choice that sustained it in the first place. The confirmation arriving now does not exempt you from continuing that same quiet trust going forward. If anything, it simply confirms that the trust has genuinely been worth maintaining all along. I want to speak plainly about the fear that once this confirmation arrives, you might somehow lose it through a single moment of renewed doubt or a single difficult stretch that tests your hope again. Genuine hope, built through repeated difficult moments over a long period of time, is not erased by a single moment of renewed struggle. You are allowed to have moments of doubt, even within this season of confirmation. What matters is the overall pattern you have established, not flawless, unwavering belief in every single moment going forward. I want to close by returning to where this began, reminding you that none of what you have read here happened by accident. The timing of this reaching you, the fact that you stayed with it this long rather than closing it early the way you might have with something less significant, the quiet stirring you may be feeling right now, even if you cannot fully name it, all of it points towards something real happening inside you. Not simply words passing through your attention on an ordinary day. Whatever season you have been walking through, however long it has stretched, however tired it has left you, something in you is capable of continuing to hope starting today, even imperfectly, even slowly, even without having every answer figured out in advance. That capability has not disappeared, no matter how long it has gone unused. It is simply waiting for you to return your attention to it, gently, without shame, one honest moment at a time. I want to talk more specifically now about what genuine hope actually requires of a person, because I think it is often misunderstood as simply a feeling that either shows up or does not. Hope, at its most durable, is closer to a practice than a feeling. It is a repeated choice to keep believing something meaningful is possible, made again and again, especially on the days it feels least justified. That kind of hope does not depend on feeling optimistic in the moment. It depends on a decision, renewed daily, to keep moving forward rather than settling into resignation. I want you to consider that you have already been practicing that kind of hope, whether or not you have named it that way. Every day you got up despite discouragement. Every time you tried again after something did not work out. Every moment you chose to keep believing something better was possible, even while evidence seemed thin. You were practicing genuine hope. That practice has been building something real in you. Something that does not disappear simply because today feels ordinary rather than triumphant. I want to speak now about the specific weight of carrying disappointment silently, because I suspect you have absorbed more disappointment quietly than you have ever fully expressed to anyone. There is a particular exhaustion in continuing to appear composed while genuinely disappointed underneath. In continuing to encourage others while feeling considerably less encouraged yourself. I want you to know that this quiet carrying has not gone unnoticed, and that it is allowed to be acknowledged honestly rather than continuously minimized. I want to talk about the specific temptation to numb yourself against further disappointment by simply expecting less from life going forward. That temptation makes sense given everything you have experienced, but I want to gently challenge it. Expecting less does not actually protect you from disappointment. It simply guarantees a smaller life in exchange for slightly less risk of being hurt. I would rather you remain open to the possibility of something genuinely good, even knowing that openness carries some risk, than have you close yourself off so thoroughly that even genuine goodness would struggle to reach you. I want to speak about the specific courage required to keep trying after repeated setbacks, because I do not think that courage gets named often enough. It is easier to notice courage in a single dramatic moment than to notice it in the quiet repetition of simply trying again, without any guarantee that this particular attempt will be different from the ones before it. That quiet, repeated courage is real, and it deserves to be recognized as courage rather than dismissed as simply stubbornness or denial. I want to talk now about what specifically might help you continue building that kind of sustained hope going forward. Consider keeping some record, even a simple mental one, of the small moments of relief or clarity that arrive along the way, rather than only noticing the difficulties that remain. Consider allowing yourself brief moments of genuine rest, not as an indulgence, but as necessary maintenance for the ongoing work of hoping through difficulty. Consider speaking honestly with at least one person you trust about what this season has actually required of you, rather than continuing to carry the full weight in complete isolation. I want to speak plainly about grief once more, because I think it deserves to be revisited rather than only mentioned briefly. Much of what you have carried through this season may not have been anger so much as grief, for time that felt wasted, for versions of your life you once imagined that did not unfold the way you hoped. Grief deserves acknowledgement rather than dismissal. I am not asking you to rush past it toward forced positivity. I am asking you to let it exist honestly, while also allowing it to soften rather than harden you permanently over time. I want to talk about what legacy might mean in the context of this particular season, because I think you have likely underestimated how the way you have handled this difficulty might be influencing the people around you, even without your direct awareness of it. When you choose to keep hoping rather than give up completely, when you choose patience over bitterness, when you choose to remain fundamentally kind even while tired, that choice does not only affect you. It quietly shapes the people watching you, sometimes people you are not even thinking about in the moment you make that choice. I want to speak now about the specific relief of finally being able to rest a little more fully, now that some of the pressure to constantly prove your continued hope may begin easing slightly. I do not mean that you should stop hoping or believing. I mean that the exhausting sense of needing to defend your continued trust over and over to yourself or to others who may have doubted it can begin to soften as more evidence accumulates that your sustained hope was, in fact, well placed. That softening is not permission to become careless. It is simply permission to stop carrying quite so much defensive tension around your own hope, trusting instead that the unfolding pattern already speaks clearly enough on its own. I want to close this reflection with one final, honest thought. Everything shared here rests on a truth that was true long before this message reached you, and will remain true long after you finish reading it. You are someone who has consistently chosen to trust when giving up would have been fully understandable. That choice, sustained across a genuinely difficult season, has built something real in you. Something that was never actually dependent on immediate confirmation in order to matter. Whatever is now beginning to unfold around you is simply the natural continuation of a foundation that has already been quietly, faithfully established. Carry that truth gently into whatever comes next. You do not need to chase confirmation or force it to arrive faster than it naturally will. You simply need to continue being who you have already consistently, faithfully chosen to be, trusting that whatever is already beginning to unfold will continue to reveal itself clearly in its own time, exactly as it has already begun to do. Wherever you are reading this, whatever room, whatever moment of your day this happens to be, let it settle into you fully before you move on to whatever comes next. You are not required to feel completely different immediately. You are simply invited to remain a little more aware of what you have already built through sustained trust, trusting that whatever is unfolding will continue to reveal itself, patiently, one honest day at a time. Starting from right now, I want to speak once more, before I let you go, about the specific fear that you might have already missed the moment that mattered, that some earlier chance was the real opportunity and everything since has simply been managing the disappointment of having missed it. I want to gently challenge that fear. Life rarely offers only a single narrow window for something good to happen. What is genuinely meant for you tends to remain available in one form or another, even after earlier opportunities have passed. You have not missed your only chance. You are simply still in the process of arriving at the one that is actually yours. I want to talk about what it might mean to release the specific timeline you once imagined for your life, without releasing hope itself along with it. It is possible to let go of a particular picture of how things were supposed to unfold by a certain age or a certain point, while still holding firmly to the belief that something genuinely good remains possible for you. Releasing a specific timeline is not the same as giving up. It is simply making room for a version of good that may look different from what you originally pictured, but that could still turn out to be exactly what you actually needed. I want to speak plainly about the fear of being forgotten, because I suspect it has quietly shaped more of your thinking than you have fully acknowledged. The fear that your effort goes unnoticed, that your quiet endurance means nothing to anyone beyond yourself, that you could disappear from your own life and very little would actually change. I want to address that fear directly. You have not been forgotten. Every quiet act of endurance, every moment you kept going when stopping would have been easier, has been noticed, even if the noticing has not yet translated into visible recognition from other people. I want to close by reminding you, one final time, that you have already survived every difficult day up to this exact point in your life, without a single exception. That fact alone deserves more credit than you likely give it in your quieter, more discouraged moments. Whatever specific difficulty you are currently facing, you already have direct evidence, built from your own lived experience, that you are capable of enduring hard things and eventually finding your way through them, even when you cannot yet see exactly how that will happen this time. Carry that evidence with you gently as you move forward from this moment, not as pressure to perform resilience perfectly, but as a quiet, steady reminder available to you whenever doubt returns. You have already built something real. Whatever comes next simply continues to reveal what was already true about you, long before circumstances began confirming it more visibly. Let this be the moment you choose to continue being exactly who you have already consistently chosen to be, gently, honestly. One small step at a time, trusting that the next step will become visible once you have actually taken this one. That has always been enough to keep moving forward, even during your hardest seasons, and it remains enough today as well. I want to add a few more thoughts before I let you go, because I think they deserve their own space rather than being folded too quickly into the closing. I want to talk about the specific weight of carrying something quietly for a long time, without anyone around you fully understanding its size. There is a particular kind of loneliness in that. One that has nothing to do with being physically alone and everything to do with feeling unseen even while surrounded by people who genuinely care about you. You have likely smiled through conversations while carrying something heavier underneath, not out of dishonesty, but because explaining the full depth of it felt exhausting, or because you were not sure anyone would actually understand, even if you tried. I want you to know that being misunderstood by people who love you does not mean you have been truly alone in what you carried. It simply means human understanding has limits, even within good and caring relationships. Every version of your story that never found the right words. Every feeling too complicated to explain in a normal conversation. None of it went unnoticed. It was known fully, even in the moments you felt most invisible to everyone around you. I want to speak now about the small, quiet acts of resilience you have shown that likely went completely unrecognized by anyone else. The mornings you got up anyway, even when everything in you wanted to stay under the covers. The responsibilities you kept fulfilling even while feeling emotionally depleted. The kindness you continued extending to other people even during weeks when you had very little kindness left over for yourself. None of that was small. It takes real strength to keep functioning while carrying real weight. And that strength deserves acknowledgement, even if you have rarely given it to yourself. I want to talk honestly about anger as well. Because I think some of what you have carried was not only grief or fear, but genuine anger at situations that felt unfair, at people who let you down, at a version of your life that did not unfold the way you once expected it to. Anger is not automatically wrong or unfaithful. It is often simply evidence that something mattered deeply to you, that a real hope was genuinely disappointed. I am not asking you to suppress that anger or pretend it does not exist. I am asking you to let it exist honestly, without letting it become the permanent lens through which you view everything ahead of you. I want to talk about the version of yourself that existed before certain hard seasons changed you, because I suspect there are days you quietly miss that earlier version. The one who trusted more easily, who worried less about being hurt again, who had not yet learned to brace for disappointment before it even arrived. I want to offer you a different way of viewing that earlier self. You are not required to return to exactly who you were before, as though everything you have lived through since then was simply damage that needs undoing. Some of what you have become through hardship is genuinely more solid than what existed before it, even if it does not always feel that way in quieter, more vulnerable moments. I want to speak now about what it means to actually trust a process you cannot fully see the end of yet once more, because I think it deserves repeated emphasis rather than being said only once and left behind. Trust like that is built slowly through small moments of choosing to keep going, even without complete certainty, rather than through one dramatic decision made once and never revisited again. Every time you choose to keep showing up despite uncertainty, that trust becomes a little sturdier, a little more able to hold you steady the next time doubt returns, as it likely will at some point along the way. I want to talk about patience once more as well, not as passive waiting, but as an active, ongoing choice to keep moving forward even when results are not immediately visible. Patience is often misunderstood as simply enduring without complaint. But real patience involves continued effort alongside continued waiting. It means still showing up, still trying, still taking small steps forward, even while the larger outcome remains unclear. That kind of patience is far more demanding than passive waiting, and it deserves genuine respect rather than being dismissed as simply doing nothing while time passes. I want to speak honestly about setbacks once more, because I do not want to suggest that once real change begins, everything moves forward smoothly, without any further difficulty. Setbacks are a normal part of almost every meaningful process of growth, not evidence that the growth itself was never real to begin with. If you experience a setback during this season, even after genuinely believing something had shifted, I want you to resist the urge to interpret that setback as proof that nothing actually changed. Growth is rarely a straight upward line. It tends to move forward with occasional dips and pauses along the way. And those dips do not erase the genuine progress made before them. I want to talk about identity once more, because I think a great deal of what has weighed on you connects back to quiet uncertainty about who you actually are underneath your circumstances, your job, your relationships, your daily responsibilities. It is easy to let external circumstances define your sense of self, especially during long seasons of struggle, when it can feel like your entire identity has narrowed down to simply surviving whatever is currently in front of you. I want to gently remind you that you are more than your current circumstances, more than whatever difficulty you happen to be facing right now. Circumstances shift constantly, but the core of who you actually are has remained steady underneath all of it, even during the seasons that felt most destabilizing. I want to speak about community once more as well, because I think isolation has likely made everything feel heavier than it needed to feel. Even a small amount of genuine connection, a single honest conversation, a single relationship where you do not have to perform constant strength, can meaningfully lighten a burden that feels unbearable when carried entirely alone. If you have been isolating yourself, even unintentionally, during this difficult season, I want to gently encourage you to consider reaching toward at least one person you trust, even in a small way. Vulnerability feels risky, especially after being hurt before, but genuine connection rarely happens without some degree of that risk. I want to close this extended reflection by speaking directly one final time to whatever specific fear or doubt is loudest in you right now, in this exact moment as you finish reading. Whatever that particular fear is, whether it concerns your finances, your relationships, your health, your sense of purpose, or something else entirely, I want you to know that fear does not have final authority over what actually happens next in your life. Fear is loud, and it often feels urgent and convincing, but it is not always accurate, and it is not always predictive of what will genuinely unfold. You are allowed to feel that fear honestly while still choosing to take the next step forward despite it, rather than waiting for the fear to disappear completely before you are willing to move. So take one more slow breath before you close this message and move forward into whatever comes next in your day. You have carried enough for long enough. Something lighter is genuinely allowed to begin now. Even quietly, even gradually, even before you can fully explain everything that has shifted inside you. Something has changed, and you are allowed to let yourself believe that, one honest step at a time, for as long as it takes to feel solid beneath your feet again.